Well, welcome, guys. Today we will be going through some Azure DevOps, get a little bit of background about how we got to Azure DevOps, go into what it is, and then how you use it, and then, of course, at the end, how Oakwood can help you get there, okay? So hang with me. Like Tim said, if you guys have any questions as you go along, feel free to use the chat feature or, just blurt in and stop us. I think there's enough of us on here that we can have a conversation between each other. So, yep. All right, well, let's get started. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what DevOps is in general. I think as all of us know from the development community, it was the bringing together of the people, process, and technology. And what that does is it enables us to deliver a continuous delivery of value to our end users. It's not a new thing that's out here. Everybody says, oh, DevOps now, but we have been doing it for a long time. I think the thing about it is it hasn't been until recently that a big focus has been put on it just from some of the headaches that we've had when doing development projects. Way back in about 2007, there was a lot of circumstances around lean manufacturing. You guys remember Toyota? They brought their lean manufacturing, and maybe some of you have had to go through some of those methodology conferences where you try to be more lean. Well, that's kind of what DevOps is bringing to the table too, is it took a look at the processes that we go through and tried to make sure that we are being as efficient as possible. There was a conference way back, I think it was around 2007-8. It was an Agile conference, and there's a book that came out speaking about Agile, and that's when we all said, well, that's what we need to be. We need to all be Agile. And then a little bit later, somebody said, well, we're going to do Scrum, and we all started doing Scrum. And as you guys know, methodology-wise aside, what holds it together is the DevOps in the middle. And it's what allows us to take our technology and our processes, hold them together while we go through this cycle of getting work done. So anyway, just a little bit background. Normally, companies that implement DevOps, they're awesome in the end. So about 46% of times for a deployment frequency. Think about how many times that you have to go through the same thing to get your product or applications out, and all the changes that you have. And what this allows you to do is get to faster time to market. It lowers your failure rates for anything that you're doing. Like I said, faster lead time. It's going to increase your revenue. And of course, any of the recovery, let's say you made a change and you got to roll that back. Well, you can just spin this right back around when using the right tools. So some of the problems that exist out there today, I've worked, and I'm sure you guys have worked at a lot of different places in your careers, but if you look at the DevOps practices that are out there, you still have these silos that people work in. And, operations, the first one here is ops keeps slowing us down. Development runs at a pace, and we'll throw our hands up and say, well, we can't do anything because they keep slowing us down and we can't really get there fast enough. An inconsistent environment configuration is probably one of the worst, where, well, it works over here in this environment, and why doesn't it work over there? A lot of teams go through it, and they say that a lot with some of the projects that we've even been involved in. Or we can't find the time to possibly do every step in your SDLC. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's not. And you'll find that a lot in a non-agile organization that's not embracing what agile is, or even from that matter, from a Scrum methodology standpoint. Testing, a huge one right there. It's always laborious. It takes a long time to get tests stood up, and we just don't have time for that. So we're just going to do a lot of manual testing throughout what we do. And then, of course, everything moves too quickly to properly have all your security processes in place. So from a OpSec standpoint, they're going to be looking at how secure is this, and are you making sure that what you're getting ready to push out is secure. So these are some of the problems today that are currently existing out there in just DevOps. So let me introduce Azure DevOps. And what this is it's bringing all of those items that you would have problems with, and it kind of takes care of all of them. You still got to stand up and do some of it, but it's all there as one. I wish Microsoft had renamed this to something other than Azure DevOps, because it's not even really just Azure. You can use Azure DevOps with Amazon. You could use it with Google. You could use it for open source. It's not just an Azure type project or product either. The name in it's kind of a little bit misleading, but it is hosted out in Azure, so I guess Azure DevOps. It used to be Visual Studio Team Services for you guys that have heard that before. And then before that, of course, it was TFS, Team Foundation Server. But this is the latest iteration of it, but it brings everything that your team is going to want to do underneath one product. You've got your Azure Boards out there that allow you to see what everything is going on in the project, be able to move items around from a Kanban board, which we'll go through each one of these individually here in upcoming slides. Azure Repos, you can use TFS as a team version control, or you can use Git. Those are right out of the case. There's also hooks into other core code repositories as well. The Azure Pipelines is what helps you do all of your builds and run your tests and do deployments. So it's more of like a workflow inside of the Azure DevOps offerings. Azure Test Plans, of course, by the name, that's where you would keep all your test plans, but it's a great place to do checklist type tests, but also automating of those tests. And then Azure Artifacts, that would be where you keep all your code libraries, any kind of components that you're using, and you can use that across many of your different projects and know that if I go and I update this one code repository, then it's going to affect all the other projects that rely on that artifact itself. So let's get into the weeds with each one of these. So like I said, the boards, as you can see kind of from a picture over on the right, it's like a Jira board. This has kind of been in TFS for a while too. You could see boards inside of there, but this allows, say, a product management team or your project manager to go in, or even a team lead, to go in and put in some backlog items and then have those items available to be assigned out to all of your resources. It allows you to put all your ideas out there, be able to, it integrates in with your GitHub commits and pull requests that are out there too. So as you see things moving around through that flow, it will actually update this chart as well. And it also has all the nice pretty graphs that people like to see, like the burn down charts and how am I doing and what's my velocity and things like that. Azure Repos, that's the place where you keep your code. It's your repositories. So you have unlimited private Git repositories out there that you can put out. Like I said, you can also do the Team Foundation version control if you still want to stay on that. Using Git's a lot more cool, and people always like that, but it also does support the Team Foundation version control. Already works with your Git client whenever you're going through and setting up a new repo. It'll ask you what you want to set up. You want to set one up with the Team Foundation version control, or you want to use Git. And if you already have a Git repository, it just asks you for the credentials and everything, and you can hook that up. There's kind of a webhooks and API integration that you can do inside of this too. So as you're doing pull requests or pushes, you can also tell it to do other things. So maybe I want a code review or something to happen, or the flow to that to be a little bit different than what's inside of GitHub. I don't have to use the one that's in GitHub, but I can make up my own. The other thing that the repos allow you to do is do a semantic search across all of your repository. So if you're looking for something but you can't quite remember where it is, you just go out there and quickly find where that was, or what change set that was, and what commit that was, who did it, the people that were involved along the way, and it'll kind of show you a nice pretty picture of what that looks like. Next up is Azure Pipelines. This will be the meat and potatoes of Azure DevOps and what makes it so powerful. Before we had some code repository and we put our items in there, and we may have had a build server that was out there, but what it was lacking was the pipeline to do something with it. And this is where the real power of the platform comes. You can do any language, any platform, and any cloud that you want with Azure DevOps. You can pull in and do tests against those. You can deploy these out. A lot of people don't even use just .NET when you're doing something. There's a lot of JavaScript libraries out there. There could be even Java or PHP, some Ruby on Rails. It doesn't matter what the source code is. You can still use this pipeline to not just build it, but build it on a specific server and deploy it to wherever it is that you're wanting to deploy it to. And it's very extensible. As we go out and you look at the items that you can do out in the pipelines, it's being built every day because it is open source itself. There's a huge community that keeps adding and adding to the pipeline functionality. And as you can see over on the right-hand side, as you build up a pipeline, it's basically you're telling it step by step what you want to happen, whether it's during the build or from the deployment standpoint. And it just goes through phases. And as you run it, it pops open kind of like a little command style window down in the bottom right-hand corner of that screen, and it'll show you exactly what it's doing. And if there was an error, it would show up. But as you go through it and do it, you can see what's going on. You can also push up to containers or Kubernetes. So if you're using Docker, still use Docker. If you're using Kubernetes, use that. And like I said, a lot of open source that's out there today too. Just kind of like a look of it, it looks like a workflow. So as you're going through, you kind of build up a pipeline of what you want to happen. And then if certain things happen in that pipeline, well, then it could switch over to pushing to a QA or to a production environment. So very extensible and very easy to use. It can get complex and behind it. You can make it as complex as you want to as well. Lots of variables, things that you can pull in and out of your code, feed it information, hit a database. Your mind is just as far as you can dream with it. And I mean, it's really, really extensible. It's great. From a test plan standpoint, what would a platform be if it didn't have the right test plans, right? So we all love this part. QA departments in general love this part. It has awesome dashboards that are out there to show you code coverage, what was tested, what wasn't tested from a functionality standpoint. It goes across the web, it goes across the desktop, and it's got your end-to-end traceability inside of it. One of the things that is also in there is like a little web recorder to be able to automate up your own tests. So as you go through and you want to record one of these tests, imagine being able to do that, and at some point in there, stripping that part out, making it a little bit more dynamic because it's all scripted out in the end anyway, and then having that replay back. So, it just lends itself to being not just functional testing, but also performance testing, and not just testing on .NET code, like I said, testing across whatever system that it is that you're making. You can put Selenium tests out here. You could put any kind of other tests that you would possibly want to use. So Azure Artifacts, like I said, this would be where you put all your little code libraries for components, any kind of managed package types that you would wanting. When you make up a pipeline, you can tell it, hey, go pull that out of my artifacts library and bring that into my build pipeline. So what it allows you to do is keep versioning out there and knowing that when tests run, they're going to always run with the right one, and also being able to push out changes when you need to push them out from a library standpoint. I don't know how many times that I've been involved in projects where a developer, they upgraded their toolkit with a different version than other developers had, and they were coding for some APIs that weren't available to everybody else. And when it got pushed out, it was pushed out wrong because the person that had it the last had the wrong version. And, just testing would have caught that too, by the way. But having a place where you can go and put those components out there really saves time. It also helps you with, well, man, what happens if it's in hundreds of projects? You've got one place to go update it. And then if you need to version across multiple, you certainly can too. So we talked about a lot of things. I think hopefully I've conveyed the message that what Azure DevOps is bringing to the table is it's broadening the Azure ecosystem too. You've got all these tools out there for Azure DevOps, but they've also brought along all the tools that you normally would use. So some of you may be using Jenkins that's out there. You may be using Chef recipes, some Puppet, or anything else that you've got in your pipelines today if you're doing some builds today. So that's what makes it so powerful is Azure DevOps. It lets you choose the tools in the clouds that you love and that you want to bring instead of saying, hey, it's just Azure. So I could go to Azure. I would go to Azure. I love Azure. Azure's cool. But so is AWS. I like Docker images too, so I may want to use some of those. I have to make iOS apps too. Those have to go out, and that's how we do most of our mobile. We're all Android and Apple now. So knowing that Azure DevOps allows me to do all of my projects in one place and then bring in the technologies where I actually need them allows it to be a very powerful platform. I've been using it ever since it was Visual Studio Team Services and has seen the transition that they've made to what it is today. I can't wait to see where they're going to take it next, and it just keeps growing and growing with the functionality that's being put in there and the programs that you use of being able to plug those into the pipelines and do testing and get that information back. And it's just made a really, really great product, I'm sorry. So I'm going to go through a couple other things that it does bring, but it uses some of the other resources inside of Azure, of course. One of the things is self-service dev test environments. So my item back there where I was saying, hey, how come, what's these things of why DevOps doesn't really work? Well, here's one of them. Everybody needs a dev test environment every once in a while, and you should be able to go out and stand those up yourself if you need one. So working with Azure DevOps, you can spin up those environments. So as part of your build packages and pipelines, you can say that you need an environment and specify that it is just a dev test environment. They don't cost as much. They're usually easy to stand up, do your testing on, and then tear it back down. So, but what it also allows your IT staff to do is to enforce your policies and control your costs with all the visibility that they would need. They can use templates out there that they've already made these environments for, and allows you to take those and reproduce any environment that they have. And like I said, you orchestrate this up with your pipelines, and then also if you didn't want to use that, you can stand these up with an REST API. We've talked a lot about using templates and things, but one of the powers that this brings is taking your IT and looking at how you do servers and how you do the configuration of those servers and doing that as code. And then storing that out in one of your repos. If you did it that way, you would be ensured that your environments are going to match, and that when you think about what's going to be different between those environments, that those things are made to where they're variables and they can be plugged in with environment variables or who knows what type of variables. You can also use third-party tools that are out there like Terraform, Ansible, Chef, Puppet, SaltStack, any of those. They all spit out their configuration as code now. You use Azure Resources Manager and automation and any other third-party integrations that are out there to help automate the deployment of reliable infrastructure as code. the one thing that is wrapped around Azure DevOps and, of course, Azure itself is the Azure Security Center. So as your IT organization is out there and they're setting up their policies for security, Azure DevOps has to respect those too. So the environment that you are in, even though Azure DevOps can live alone outside an Azure tenant, if you were to say that you're going to use that tenant as part of your pipeline, it will look at your Azure Security Center and make sure that it's adhering to the security policies that were set forth. It's ISO certified and also SOC 2 certified, so that holds up with just about every audit that we have to go through. But there's all kinds of tools and everything out there to be able to look and detect and respond to any threats that are out there that any developer or infrastructure person would put in. From a monitoring standpoint, we can still monitor these all back using Azure Monitor, lots of application insights and log analytics to be able to create a dashboard that only a person could dream about. I tell you, there's tons and tons and tons of information that is out there that you can consume and put in a dashboard. If you've got ones that you want to make yourself, you can always use Power BI and create up a dashboard too. But there's all kinds of different information that is out there. The other nice part about it is you can also integrate this into other existing process tools like ServiceNow. So if you got a ticketing system, actually see those come in and back and forth. All the APIs and webhooks are in there for it. So I hope I've been able to convince you that Azure DevOps is pretty awesome. What it's going to allow you to do is plan a little bit smarter. You've got a collaborative view that all your team can be out there, and hopefully that will allow you to ship your product faster and give you a little bit more modern dev services when it comes to your team. Like I said, any platform is out there, meaning any developer and any cloud too. So you've got support for a hybrid cloud, on-premise or in containers. You could use all the services that are out there, or you can just choose what you want to complement your flow that you have. If you already have some Jenkins workflows out there, by all means, bring it into here, but use and take advantage of what it is that you can, because I guarantee it's going to probably be more than what you're using right now. It is fairly easy to stand up an open source project that's out there. If you do, and you keep it open source, that you've got free unlimited build minutes for any projects, and then you can run up to 10 jobs. If not, you've got like one job that you can do that's out there. You can also pay for more minutes and things like that. Buy a build server that's out there. I think it's like, I don't know, $40 a month or something. But you can get started for free. I think a team of 5 is free out there, and kick the tires and see what's going on, and do a little POC with it and see if you could use it. So like I said, here's a little bit of the pricing. Small teams up to 5 for free. You got 1,800 minutes, which is more than enough time in a month to be able to do and have a job that's hosted out there and use the functionality of it. A team up and above that, they start in, it's like 10 packs, but it's like $6 a user, but you got to buy 10 of them at a time. So it's like $60 as you add people. Plus, like I said, the build server that is out there that you can buy into. If you think about having to have a build server sitting there and the licensing costs for it and having to do all the patching and everything, it's way better to just do the build server out on Azure than having to do it back on-prem. So just something to look out for. So we talked about a lot of things here, but the biggest thing I get asked is, where do you get started with this? And I think the chart there in the middle, the continuous improvement process, is where we try to get our customers. Where if you start over on the left-hand side with the planning part of it, that's kind of what we went through with the boards, is trying to get your team to where you're putting the information in there and you're being able to plan out your work. And then going in the circle, the development, your team's doing the development, and then we've got the source control system that's sitting there. From that point, you go through some automated build and code quality checks. making sure that what you're getting ready to deliver out into these environments is the best that it can be. And you also want to make sure from a code quality standpoint that you're checking that as well. No sense in pushing out some code that's not going to live up to your standards, which a lot of those tools, they are out in Azure DevOps too, and you can have it run through that. But from there, we'll go into some deploying of environments, and with your infrastructure as code, you could do your automatic provisioning of those environments. And the configuration of the servers that would be in those environments should be living out there too. So as you push this out, your configuration management is out there, and then the automatic deployment of those. And then once environments are out there, running through automatic acceptance testing and making sure that did we do what we said that we were going to do as a sanity check, running some more tests up against that, going into some performance and load testing of those environments to know whether or not did we improve the system or did we degrade the system. And then from a release management standpoint, knowing there's going to be a gatekeeper that's always sitting there wanting to say, hey, yes, I do approve of this, and it can go live. And then from there, we've got feedback that it's going to come in. So as the application runs, we've got notifications if anything happens, all the log management that's out in the environments and being able to feed that back. And then, of course, any kind of application performance monitoring that's on there. And all that gets pushed right back into the feedback loop. And then from that, we start planning for the next iteration. So from a true product management standpoint, this is the what they're all trying to get to. And this is what Azure DevOps actually brings to the table, is letting your team do this process. And it's not saying that you have to bite it off all at one whack, but what we help you do is come in and take a look at what are you doing today. So like our Azure DevOps 1 hour briefing is just to get on the phone with you and talk about what it is that you're doing and how you're doing it and what tools that you're doing it with, and then trying to help you steer you in the right direction of what you maybe should do with Azure DevOps. We've got a more extensive one that's more of a discovery and coming in, and maybe not so much today, but maybe getting on a phone call and doing some discovery on a webinar along the line, doing some video chat, I guess. And saying, hey, here's where we're at today. I've got a big checklist that I keep myself where I look for the maturity model of where you're at there too, and I kind of go through that there. Or even if you just want to do a maturity engagement where you already have it, but you want to get in and maybe have us teach you how to do some of these more advanced things that are inside of Azure DevOps, we do that. And then, of course, the one that we always get that comes in is the Azure DevOps migration. That's where we're moving from a code repository system that you may already have and then moving it out into Azure DevOps. A lot of TFS to Azure DevOps migrations that we've done, but like I said, it could be any source code repository that was out there. Git's pretty easy to go get the Git, but if you're trying to keep some history and stuff, all of these, they all have their own complexity to them. But we've got a few years of experience in actually doing this and helping our customers across all of these and trying to take advantage of what's out there. I think that's one of the biggest things too. But once you get to this part in the middle where you're able to do this continuous improvement process, that's what's going to make the value of Azure DevOps shine in your organization. And, so anyway, that's pretty much what I have to go through. Are there any questions, Tim?
I don't see any questions that came in over chat. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to pose a question. Now would be a great time. I'm sure if you have a question, others probably could learn something from the answer as well. If you don't want to pose it here, feel free to send Chad. Do we have a last slide with your email address, or is that just up front, Chad?
It was just up front.
Okay. smoss@oakwoodSys.com is Shad's email address, and I'll make sure to reach out to each and every one of you to provide this deck so that, again, you can review this in-house in case you missed anything. Then once I get the video edited up, I'll be sure to pass that along as well. So no fear, you'll receive an email from me, so if you have any questions, you can reach out to us that way as well. But if you don't have any questions, we appreciate you joining us. Yes, thank you, Shad. Also, one more
Hey, we
quick
got
thing.
another one coming next week. Yeah.
That's right. So if you go to oakwoodsys.com/events, Shad is actually giving another presentation next Wednesday around application modernization. And then in a few weeks, we have just published yesterday, we're doing a Power BI dashboard in a day. So any of those that dabble in data and analytics space, Shad's going to be along with that, as well as our data and analytics lead, Matt Bowers. So if you'd like, head on over to those. You can get some more information on how to register there. So that's all we got. We appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Like I said, Tim said, if you guys have any questions, shoot them on over. And if you need some help, let us know. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Appreciate your time.